Next. Let's go. Unable to connect to streaming on saving. Yeah, we're live. Fucking sweet. We're using Restream, it's called, and fucking way better than StreamYard. That was costing a fortune. Anyway, God bless everyone. Hope you've had a fucking good week. And we'll bring on our special guest, Matty J. Staggs, you absolute legend. How's your week been, mate?
G'day, Cobb. Oh, it's been long, but I mean, I didn't get launched 3 miles into the stratosphere. You know, I didn't get acute radiation poisoning. I didn't get eaten by dingoes, and I survived a trip out bush. So it's
nice. Yeah, so you went out west to this town that's become under native title.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
What's the name of the town?
Tubia. So basically, there was a town which went under native title, and it was under what was called non-exclusive use. So I think it was non-exclusive use or non-exclusive land right use, but it basically meant like if it's under native title, but people could still use it. You know, there's like a playground or like a pond and things like that. And 2 days before the Queensland government went into caretaker mode, they were given the land went over to freehold. Freehold basically meant that it was now officially private land, and 95% of the town is under freehold, which means it's personal. You know, it's owned privately by this Aboriginal corporation who doesn't even live there. So they live hundreds of kilometers away. Mate, it's a
so it's just gone to rack and ruin, I'd imagine, or was it always in rack and ruin?
Oh, holy shit, Dusty! It is an absolute blow the lid off massive scam. I know there are some people where they kind of doubt it. They're like, oh, you know, they didn't really work. Like the shit that I found out there, and the work that the townspeople have put together, it was like cut and dry, 100% illegitimate, and they've got proof of it. And it reached a point where the state MP out there, not only is he actually directly acknowledging or refuting the claims out there, it's reached the point where he can't prove them wrong. So he's basically just stopped picking his phone up. But it's cooked, right? Like here's an example. So for a native, so Eddie Mabo had what was called the Mabo decision in the 90s. I think it was 93. Which basically meant that if someone can prove that they were on the land or they were living or they settled the land prior to 1788, then that's called a native title determination, right? So like if there's an Aboriginal corporation that says like there's rock art, you know, or there's archaeological finds or there's something that says we were here prior to 1788, that's what they use to determine native title right. Now, why 2B is this massive? It's a fucking massive scam, and it's horrendous. Is the Aboriginal corporation, so the Bigambul Corporation, who's got the native title determination, their native title determination only went as far back as 1931, because what happened from 1920 to 1964, there was on the other side of the Tubia Creek in the Tubia Reserve, they had what was called a sacred camp, which we went there, and it's still full of broken glass and asbestos and all sorts of things, which I got plenty of photo evidence of too. But what actually happened was in 1931 there was a flood, and the flood surrounded the town of Tubia, and there was an Aboriginal woman who was part of the Bigambul Corporation, and she was giving birth, and because it was flooded, she couldn't get to a hospital, so she had twins that were stillborn, and the stillborn twins were buried in the Tubia Reserve. And that burial meant that the Bigambul Corporation said this is a sacred burial ground for the Bigambul people because we've got our ancestors buried here. And their ancestors were 2 stillborn babies from 1931, which is still tragic, but like that's a far cry from like prior to 1788, right?
Yeah.
And there's actually proof of
them babies were Australian at that point, what I would consider, well, that's a tragedy, sad story. The Australians, you know,
and there's
the
actually
babies.
There's another
Horrible.
tribe called the Gamilaroi that actually did prove that they were there prior to 1788. And they said, look, we're not interested in a freehold native title. In fact, we're not really interested in native title at all. So the Gamilaroi could prove that they settled the land prior to 1788. But the Bingable Corporation, who only proved that they were there in 1931, got the native title determination. And then they contacted the community and said, if you want this land back, we're going to put a price on it of $2.5 million. So it was a massive cash grab, 100% cash grab.
And the people who already live there own the land technically, or they previously owned it technically? Like someone like had a mortgage on the pub and is paying the mortgage off on his pub, and he's like, mate, I fucking own the campground and the fucking pub.
Yeah.
Now they're saying I don't own it. I'll be like, does he stop paying his mortgage repayments? Is he like,
yeah, no,
you know what I mean? What a scam. We've got our good mate Tim Wilms waiting, so we'll get Tim Wilms on here, and we'll get back to the Aboriginal town native title thing. Tim Wilms, how you going, mate?
Hey, Dusty. Hey, Maddie. Good to see you both. Thank you again for taking part in the Unshackled US election stream. What an epic day.
That was awesome, dude. And I'm sorry I didn't stream back in. I could have live streamed it when I was at the pub. I did get to live stream into the Censored TV live and do a shoey, so that was awesome.
I think Maddie came back in later on.
Yeah.
How long did you go for?
We went for 8 hours, so it was the most epic live stream that I've ever been a part of. But that's how slow it took to count the votes. They're still counting them in California and Maricopa County in Arizona. They just can't count the votes on time.
There's something wrong with them people, hey? And I've already called it despite the counting, or what's the go with that?
Yeah, well, Trump already, it was the news networks, even CNN and MSDNC, they projected that Trump had over 270 electoral votes by about 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. It took another couple of days for them to call Arizona. Well, California it's a blue state, so they called it as soon as the voting stopped because of the exit poll.
Yeah. And this week we've been getting all these, Trump announcing these people who are the elected officials. I think I've got an image somewhere of one of these.
Some are based as fuck. Some pretty disappointing.
Oh, here's an Elon Musk image. Nothing, not relevant. I didn't number our images tonight, but here's an Elon Musk has been announced as one of these positions. It's like a efficiency commissioner. So, this guy's our new efficiency commissioner, and he's standing up. Historical guilt is dumb. Your ancestors weren't villains. Don't apologize for them to people who hate you. That's pretty good. Musk is a mad dog. It's like we've become racially the cultural Marxist boot is being lifted off our neck, and we're, what the? I mean, I reckon initially I was very like, I'm not a racist. What the fuck are you talking about? To the Marxists, I had no idea. We don't communicate like that.
Not anymore.
No, but I've never. Once I got on social media and you realize you're talking to these nutcases who are like, you're a fucking racist. And you're like, what? What's a fucking racist, cunt? And you try to explain yourself, but it's like what I should have done. And I think what the world now is realizing is we need to go, you should be in a straitjacket, you fucking weird cunt. And that is the reality dealing with the Marxists. The sick people. They have the woke mind virus. There's something wrong with
Well,
them.
there's certainly a few. Their reaction to Trump returning to the presidency, they definitely need to, I think, check themselves into a mental health facility. But did you hear that there was this over in the US? There was this father who killed his wife, 2 children, and ex-girlfriend because Trump won.
Holy
Yeah, I
fuck.
heard about that. It was unsubstantiated though. So the guy was a massive anti-Trumper, but he never like wrote a note that said it was like explicitly that reason. So
Well,
the guy,
sometimes they don't leave a note.
yeah, so it was kind of like everyone kind of speculated and said that's probably it, but it was not like beyond a reasonable doubt sort of thing. What do we got?
It's just,
What a piece of shit and a nutcase.
yeah.
Like, if there's any, that's like Chris Benoit shit, the wrestler who murdered his whole family. Insane people. Look at this guy. Jordan Peterson looks like a nutcase with that jacket on, but that talking about crazy
He
people.
looks like he is. It it looks similar to the Happy Gilmore gold jacket. You know, they're making a sequel. Adam Sandler,
Fuck
Ben
yeah,
Stiller.
winning life.
Like, well, it's obviously a Christ jacket.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big fan of Jesus. I'm a Christian. I'm totally. My brain is like, I want that real reality. I want that to be the real reality in my life. But unfortunately, I'm a Bogan. I think I need a mirror. I need the power of the Holy Spirit to help me. I don't think I'll be able to do it. Maybe if I read Jordan Peterson's book, We Who Wrestle with God. I know that's in reference to Jacob, Abraham's great grandson, who his name was changed to Israel because he wrestled with God, or he wrestled with some dude, and he said, "I will not let you go until you bless me." And there's like a full biblical story about it. But anyway, have you guys read like 12 Rules or any of that stuff?
Yeah, I've read 12 Rules for Life.
I read most of 12 Rules, and then
I've
someone stole it on
never
me.
got into Jordan Peterson. I went to his first tour of Australia, which was organised by True Arrow Events, which is, I'm not sure if you've heard, by Sam McClelland. He ended up starting his own True Arrow Media. I saw him out and about filming in Melbourne. But when Jordan Peterson he came out on stage, he basically was like, I thought about what I should speak about tonight, and it was just an hour-long
ramble.
Ramble about what it means to believe in God. Like, basically admitted from the beginning that I hadn't even planned anything, and so I'm just going to discuss this. It was more interesting for me, the mingling afterwards. It was the first time I'd met David Hiscock of the XYZ afterwards.
Nice. Awesome. That's cool. Dave is a great writer.
And also met political posting mama, Mariki Rancy, for the first time as well.
Political posting mama. She's like a Mormon. She's actually a Mormon. She doesn't really say much about that, but I've read the Book of Mormon, and the Mormons knocked on my door again this week. They were like, "Have you heard I don't know what they call it, the gospel of our Lord Savior Jesus Christ?" It was 2 ladies this time. I actually really enjoy the Book of Mormon, but anyway.
I got handed at the Frankston train station the good test, which is what some Christians hand out.
Yeah, sweet. And it proves how you're a dirty, rotten sinner in the need of Jesus Christ, Timothy.
Yeah, that's a good summary of it. It was the guy that gave it to me. He sort of didn't look like he was Jesus inclined, if you know what I mean.
I used to do that when I became a Christian. I would go into Brisbane City Friday nights after church. We had Friday night church at Hillsong, and then me and my buddies, these guys were like all ex-cons and ex-drug addicts, would go in there and evangelize, like handing out them little, are called tracts. Like if you were in the scene, they call them tracts, handing out tracts. And we'd get like 30 people a night would be like, I want to become a Christian, and we'd like pray with them, and it was awesome. But yeah, it's like there's this whole like method of using the law to be like, we've all sinned, we're all guilty, and Jesus is the way to forgiveness of them sins. So I believe that's absolutely true. Like I'm like, sign me up.
Well, we've all
throwing my hands in with
in
the
our
Lord.
lives.
Absolutely.
Do you think there's something a little bit absurdist about Jordan Peterson and his fame?
I've like I said, I've never gotten into him, and it just it was completely sort of, I was like I said, completely sort of lost and confused about what he was saying. But he basically became famous by accident. He went viral at his university for saying that he wouldn't be compelled to use somebody's preferred pronouns. You're not going to force me to call you something that's ridiculous. Compel me to do this. So that's what he got, and it was considered, like, for a university professor to take a stand like that. It was considered quite the unprecedented stance at the time.
Yeah, because I know I think about this a bit, and I might sound like a bit of a nut job having a ramble, but there's like I'm a Roman Catholic. Philosophically, I'm a devout absurdist, and absurdism means that you kind of can't explain how things happen the way that they do. All you know is that things happen the way they do because they do, and whether or not you can see the reason, there's always a reason. And with Jordan Peterson, when you actually look at the evolution of his career, because he was a professor for decades, like he was a professor for something like 25 years, before he went viral in 2015 with that clip, and it's almost like he can't cope with his fame, or he's got this fame, but it's not like he asked for it. So he's kind of like he's there, but he's not sure why he's there. So he kind of has to make it up as he goes to a certain extent. There's actually a very interesting character who he reminds me of, and this comes back to the absurdism. Now there was a very, very talented, extremely talented programmer by the name of Terry A. Davis, right? And he's basically the polar opposite of Jordan B. Peterson. So Terry Davis was a devout Christian, absolutely worshipped God. The guy had an IQ that was higher than Bill Gates. Not only that, he actually wrote and built himself an operating system called Temple OS that was based around the Bible. Now, to run Temple OS used something like 20% of the processing power than it did to run Windows. So it was an extremely efficient operating system, right? The guy was an absolutely insane level genius. But the problem was the guy had massive mental problems, and he had this terrible pornography addiction. And it was like every second word that came out of this guy's mouth was a slur, right? And it was
he's just F-bomb and everything.
Oh, like
jerking the
gherkin. Yeah, and it's tragic, right? Because
what a man. We could bring him on this show.
Oh, he died sadly in 2018. His name was Terry A. Davis. His life was well documented, and it's really sad because, like, Jordan Peterson, he's this man who is incredibly brilliant, and he became famous, and he's kind of like, I'm not really sure. I'm just going to kind of wing it. But then you've got someone like, say, Terry A. Davis, who was extremely bright and talented and could have changed the world. but he couldn't keep his mouth shut, and he just kept throwing out slurs, so no one could look past, the slurs to see how genius he was.
Well, as Kramer says about the soup Nazi in that famous Seinfeld episode, every genius is a bit eccentric. And certainly Trump and Musk fit that definition. I mean, there's Musk infamous about to the Disney CEO, Bob Iger, don't advertise, go fuck yourself.
Good on him. I felt powerful after watching that video. Watching Musk do that.
And he's busy building and launching these rockets that can come down to Earth intact while he's shitposting.
Fuck yeah! What a genius! Legend.
I couldn't believe that. Hey, like when Starship Flight Number 5 and he caught that rocket booster. Like I remember I watched that video with my kids and I was like, this is like watching the Apollo mission. Like this is like it was previously impossible. And then he's gone and done it. So now it's like we've actually excelled and we actually have new knowledge and new abilities as like a race as like a species, right? Like he did it. He broke that threshold, right? Extremely inspirational. And then the next day, like California is saying that we need to limit the amount of rockets because he's making mean tweets. And I remembered thinking, like, are you fucking kidding me? Like this guy has just proven that human beings are now more capable than they were yesterday. We can no longer say that it can't be done because he's just done it. And they're worried about mean tweets. Like, come on. There's bigger things to worry about.
And his tweets aren't that mean, are they? Like you could almost share every one of his tweets. Like they're all terrible. This is one of his tweets.
The definition of mean tweets is like the threshold is very low.
This is a mean tweet, Tim, where he's like, don't listen to fucking retarded Marxists who actually are racist towards white people. That's what they are. The Marxists are the racists. They are the real racists, and they hate white people. Well,
they can't really plausibly accuse Musk of being from a racist family, given that his father, Errol Musk, was an anti-apartheid politician in South Africa.
There you go. They have no reason because they're postmodern. These postmodernists, these Marxists, they don't believe in objective morality at all. So they just bullshit and twist any story. They accuse you of a list of names, and it's just for the sake of defaming you. You know what I mean? So they can further their march through the institutions. It's like they're just trying to brainwash other people. So you'd be like, he's a racist. And weaponizing these words. It's all manipulation and coercion. Like they just want to manipulate people, and good people will be like, holy fuck. What does even that word mean again, mate? And you look it up and you're like, maybe I am.
There's a really, really simple method, I guess we'll call it. So a lot of these Marxists, they use these words and these insults very, very liberally. I was recently reading, there's actually a almost sort of like I suppose you could call it a conversational tactic or a debate tactic. Now there's this tactic, it's called a Kafka trap. Now what a Kafka trap is when you're talking to someone, it's basically you give someone an accusation and it's structured in such a way where if you deny the accusation, it makes the accusation sound more likely. So an example, right, is if someone says you're a murderer, and then you might turn around and say, I'm not a murderer, and they're going to say that's exactly what a murderer would say. Therefore, I definitely know.
It sounds also like one of Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals.
Yeah,
I think a lot of leftists don't even know that that's what they're utilizing.
I've never read that book, but I went to a talk about it. Lewinsky's Radicals, if that's how I say it.
The champion of reversing the rules for radicals onto the leftists is Trump's confidant Roger Stone. He published a book, Stone's Rules, and it's attack, 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 hit the enemy 10 times harder. And that's exactly what Trump did when he first ran for president in 2016. Always double down, never apologize. And they both
deny. I know that one. I know
yeah,
Roger
and they
deny,
both learnt it from Roy Cohen, who was Trump's lawyer back in the early 80s.
What's the name of this book, Tim?
Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky.
Yeah, what about Roger Stone's one?
It's just called Stone's Rules. Yeah, so Roy Cohen, he was a mentor to Trump, Roger Stone, Rupert Murdoch, and Roger Ailes, who ran Fox News. He died of AIDS in the mid-80s.
Was he a homosexual, or was
he
just
he
drug
was.
addict? Because all homosexuals are mad drug addicts at the same time.
Well, I don't know if he was
on the meth.
using. I think that's a stereotype, Dusty.
We love stereotypes, Tim.
Well, you get AIDS from a high risk activity, unprotected anal sex. Also it can be got through sharing needles.
Bang, boot.
But you don't need to do both to get it.
Yeah, it's fucked up. Well, he did something great. He wrote an awesome book. I'm gonna read Roger Stone's book anyway. Now that you've told me about it, I'm fucking keen. Because Roger Stone's my hero, actually. Like I've always said. Here's another one. We're pulling up the images.
He's a Proud Boy as well. Good friends with Enrique, who are hoping will get a pardon.
Yeah. That's looking like that's totally gonna happen. I know the Nicks from two Proud Boys were released. Their sentences were reduced from 5 years, and they got released 2 days before the election, or a day before the election. It was like, knock, knock, here's a letter. You're released in a week. They released them a day before the election. And I think it was no charges or conviction recorded. And they were just like, you're free. These were two Proud Boys. They run Murder the Media, and they entered the Capitol peacefully. I was watching the live stream. They walked in, and I was watching that Telegram that day, the day of, and they're walking around the Capitol, smoking ciggies. They're like, this is an incredible building. So beautiful. Anyway, let's go to the pub. And they got locked up, charged. They said Nick Oakes, they were like, white supremacist Nick Oakes, Proud Boy president of Hawaii chapter. And they were like, white supremacist. And they had photos of him at court and everything. But, they didn't take the photo of him with his African-American wife and his, mixed race children. So it was like that. It shows you how insane these people are. They will call a guy married to an African woman a racist.
Repeat a lie often enough and it'll be accepted as fact. I know that's what the Jews against fascism are trying to do to you. Just keep repeating that you're anti-Semitic, even though there's no evidence, and hope that it becomes true.
I know. I've got to find that. I can find that image. I've got it saved here.
It's actually why it's the same reason why I've been doing a lot of my sort of street talk style videos too. Actually, is the media has been lying about a lot of things.
This is my my mate, legit. I forget his first name. Leach.
Mark.
What's his first name, Tim?
Mark, isn't it?
Mark Leach. Mark Leach. I met him at Church and State Conference. He invited me to Never Again Is Now protest, right? He started when Sydney, the crazy Muslims on October 7, the Muslims protested, and they were cheering and happy and joyful. joyfully celebrating this attack on Israel, Mark Leach ran down to the Sydney Opera House with an Israeli flag. And
Oh, was that him?
he almost got killed. You know, they were like, "We will kill you." And then he went on to create a protest movement, Never Again Is Now. And it's a pro-Israel, I guess, pro-Jewish thing. Now, I've actually stayed right out of the Israel, Palestine, all that. I haven't really engaged. I met Mark. I interviewed him at Church and State. I interviewed Avi at Church and State as well. And we were banter with the boys, cracking jokes, having a laugh. We actually got on. Me and Mark got on. I enjoyed talking to Mark. He invited me to his thing. He gave me his number. I've got his number in my phone. I went to his event. I interviewed him, his daughter, a few other people. Like, I cracked jokes. I treated him like a mate because he treated me like a mate. He really did. And I'd cracked Jew jokes because that's what you do. I was like, "Hey, Mark," there's a censored TV episode. I'm like, "Yo, Mark, I noticed on the advertisement for this protest it said free event. Is that to get more Jews here?" And we're cracking jokes. After my interview, he jumps up on stage, repeats the same joke. You know what I mean? Like, he's actually, and I know Jews are famous for, like, you know, cracking the shits, can't take a joke.
Oh, well, those who like run these anti-defamation groups. I remember the local Anti-Defamation Commission chair, Devere Abramovich. He went after this SEN caller, John from Epping, who's like this elderly Greek man who regularly calls in about footy, and he made a joke about Harry Sheezel being drafted to North Melbourne, young Jewish player, and he's like, "Jews are the money men. Maybe his parents can help getting a team in Tasmania." And Gary Lyons says, "I wouldn't worry about that. He's just a good footballer." And Devere Abramovich basically said, "This is anti-Semitism, you know." A Jew joke to him is basically a gay. He seems like he treats it as a gateway.
But that's
to
also
another
just like a
Holocaust.
stereotype. Like, oh, you can't stereotype people.
Well, I'm sure that John from Epping he probably laughs at Greek wog jokes himself in his lifetime.
I work with like a Slavic dude, and man, I give him so much shit. And like, Mark is a Jew. He's actually Jewish. He's like, my mother's Jewish. I'm like, cool, bro. Whatever. Like, whatever, bro. I don't really care. We're chatting. He's a good dude. Good enough dude.
I remember after October 7th, you know, there was obviously there was a lot of people who were saying October 7th was justified because, you know, since the Nakba, Israel's kind of slow. You know, originally they were going to just simply be a camp inside British-owned Palestine, as per the Balfour letter from Baron Rothschild of the Rothschild family, by the way, who was in the House of Lords. And originally it was going to be that, and then obviously you had the Nakba in 1948, and they've sort of slowly, ever so been encroaching on Palestine, and it has been Palestine since the year. I think it was. I forget which year. It was around 1012 AD or something like that. So it's been Palestine for 1,000 years, right? So it's not exactly like a country that's just popped up, like Ukraine, you know, from.
But they like the Seventh Day War and shit. Like, they won that war. Like, if Muslims want to take it back, try take it back.
But I remember
fucking taking it. They own it, and all the Jews. More Jews in Israel, less Jews in Australia. Like,
but I remember, right? I was watching an episode of, I think it was Dennis Prager, and he was talking about how Israel, you know, they allow same-sex marriage, and you know, and
or not to be performed in Israel. Like, they recognize it, but it can't be performed in Israel.
Yeah. But what I actually did
Wow.
write was I remember there were things that I would read where I'm like, holy shit, like Israel is this evil country, and then there are other things and I'd read like, holy shit, Palestine is this evil country.
Hmm.
And so what I ended up doing, you're gonna say I'm gonna sound like some guy who thinks way too much into it. I actually phoned up the local synagogue here in Brisbane, and I actually spoke to the rabbi, and I actually rang him up and I said, "Look, mate, I'm not a Jew, but I have some things I want to get off my chest because there's a bit of conflict that I've got over this, and I actually want to speak to someone like face to face and see how you're experiencing it." So I said, like, I may have some criticisms. And I
Did
want
you
to
go
share
and
them.
have a beer with him and talk?
No, I went to the synagogue and I just spoke to the rabbi, and I'm like, look, this has
fucking
been
cool.
going through my head. There's some things that Israel's been doing, and I'm like, maybe that's not the best thing to do. And the guy's like, you're absolutely right. He's like, we're not perfect. Much like religion, there's different sects of Judaism, and it was actually really comforting for me to actually speak. Like I felt comfortable with the guy, and
That's cool.
the opinion that I ended up with after talking to a rabbi face to face was, I said, look, there's like if you were to like say look at the Jewish population and how and their sort of dynamics and their relationships with each other somewhere like New York, they're going to have specific relationships and act a specific way. Same with Jews in London. But as for Australia, there's
Was
so
he
much.
white? Was this guy look like European?
Yeah. But
Did that make it easier for you to communicate with him, like
I
at a
didn't even.
subconscious level?
Oh, I couldn't tell you subconscious. I didn't even pay attention to that really.
Yeah.
But I mean, I found the Australian Jewish population, like all those stereotypes, I think most of those stereotypes really don't apply to the Jewish population here in Australia. Like there might be bits and pieces, but most of it, it's not the case. And that sort of makes me realize like these pro-Palestine protests, when they're going after Jewish Australians, like they're not going, like they're thinking that they're targeting the Rothschild family, and they're targeting the coin clippers from London. Like
Are they just targeting the Jews because the Jews look white? Like
yes, that's they consider them as part of the white race.
Yeah. The Jews are now white. Like Mark looks like a white guy. Avi doesn't look like a white guy.
But, well, because there's different Jewish ethnicities.
Yeah.
But of course, the National Socialists, they don't consider the Jews white like them. So, and there's a lot of like those anti-defamation groups. What's the big one? The Anti-Defamation League over in the US, Jonathan Greenblatt. I mean, he for years has been promoting open borders, multiculturalism. He probably doesn't consider himself part of the white race. And then there was this audio leaked of him last year. Oh shit, all the people that we've imported hate us and consider us part of of evil whitey.
Yeah.
Sorry, I zoned out. I just realized we have comments in the. This is the first time using.
I put hidden that person's comments. I'm just sick of their spamming.
That's okay.
Sweet. All good. Tim, can I call in? Who's Andrew Wilson? Is he a guy that you've kicked out of the thing?
No, that's he's like a elder Australian nationalist.
Should we invite Andrew Wilson?
He was an advisor to Fraser Anning back in 2019.
I fucking love Fraser Anning. If you are wanting to jump on the stream, we'll give, in typical old school Thirsty Thursday style, I've just posted the link in the comments section.
Oh, I think he's on the live channel.
In the live chat? Oh, well, I posted in the live chat. You can click on it and you can join us. And we'll give you. We won't let you sit in here for like the whole show, but we might give you a 3-minute rant. You know what I'm saying?
There's
Specifically, the guy. He said, "Tim, can I call in this guy?" So we'll give him a crack if he wants to come in, but if not, it's the first time I'm using Restream. So
Yeah, you'll get like if somebody joins the Restream studio, there'll be like a little noise, and
okay, that's good.
And their like circle image will sort of vibrate.
Nice, I like it.
I was thinking the other day, talking about the National Socialists. I watched an interview probably about 2 months ago now with Elijah Schaffer and Thomas Sewell. And I remember it was this sort of like big, banned evil kind of stream, and Elijah kind of says like, well, Tom, take it from the top. When did you start doing what you're doing? And he was and Tom went on to explain how he wanted to become a fiery, so he wanted to work for the fire brigade in Victoria, and then he was basically turned around and said, "Oh, we're not taking new applications at this time." And he kind of goes, "Oh, that's a bummer." And then he goes,
if he was a transgender Aboriginal,
no. Then he goes down to his gym, and he's doing a workout at his gym. And he bumps into this girl that he knows who's working out really hard, and he goes, "Oh, geez, you're training hard." And she goes, "I know. I've got a fitness test with to become a fiery." And he was like, "I thought they weren't hiring." And she was like, "Well, I don't know about anything about that. I just phoned them up and I got a fitness test." And then he actually rang them back, and they said, "Oh, look, yeah, sorry, we're not taking like white Australian males."
They actually said that.
Yeah, and I thought about that for a second, where he like this comes back to the absurdism side of it, right? So like if that single phone operator at the for the Fireys Victoria, whatever they're called, if he hadn't have said that, then the National Socialist Network might not have been a thing. Something that small, But and I mean, I'm not to be fair, and I do want to say this live. So I'm not a supporter of the NSN. I think Nazism has there's no history of Nazism in Australia, especially around the war.
Well, it's also a failed ideology.
Yeah, I think
where it was founded in Germany.
I think where the National Socialists, I think they've gone too far. But at the same time, if the nation and the nation's governance and the nation's leaders are saying about these particular men and this particular group, if they're saying you guys are going too far, we don't want this, it's not welcome. The thing that they don't realize is that if they put Australians first before anyone else, if they did that would completely dissolve the National Socialist Network would have no reason to exist.
There's absolute racism towards white Anglo Australians. So I'm not a fascist, or I don't, I am what I am, but I'm not down that path of things. But the people who keep being racist to white people, you created the National Socialist Network.
Well, they embrace the racist label. I mean, Thomas Sewell, Blair Cottrell, and Joel Davis, they call themselves avowed racists, and they proudly promote their streams as promoting racism.
Do you think they're doing that? Going back to what I mentioned before with the Kafka trap. So there's a way where you can effectively nullify a Kafka trap. So if someone accuses you of being racist, right? So if someone says you're racist, they want you to respond and say, "No, I'm not," and then they're going to say, "Prove it." So that's kind of how they win these arguments. But if they look at you and they say you're racist, if you look them dead in the eye and say, "Okay, then it loses all its power." So part of me thinks that the reason why they sort of promote their streams like that is because by doing that, they're taking the power away from the Marxists who want to shut them down. So they can say, oh, this is a racist stream, and everyone will say, well, yeah, well, they said it is.
Well, the Marxists believe fucking Mark Leach is a white supremacist, and Peter Dutton's a white supremacist, and Anthony Albanese is a white supremacist. So, like, who gives a fuck what the Marxists say? Oh, we've got Andrew. We're bringing him on. G'day, mate. Welcome.
Hey.
Hi, Andrew.
Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you do in the scene of things.
I'm from a staffer.
Oh, your audio is really shit. I'm not sure if you can make it any better.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Sure. I'm a former staffer for Fraser Anning and Clive Palmer, and I just wanted to touch on the what we're calling as the Supermax shepherd, Saul, who is intent on both boosting the year-on-year ASIO budget by 70%, as well as shepherding and creating lots of new legal precedent at a judicial level, an expansion of the executive with reference to funding and stuff like that. I've spoken about that with ASIO, as well as passing new, being the raison d'etre for lots of new legislation, which we all know is not going to be restricted to swastikas and arm salutes. It's going to be aimed at Anglo-Saxons, white people in Australia, and I know I really want to promote the idea of the Supermax shepherd, Saul. So that's my contribution.
Yeah, it seems like I would like to maybe be able to have a conversation with them guys, but what I found strange is that when they had this pepper spray incident with the police, and it was like no one was arrested. Now, I've been to protest. I've worked for Censored TV for 5 years.
Which one are you talking about? Was it the one?
A few weeks ago, they had some interaction with the police, and there was pepper spray deployed and a bit of argy-bargy. Like, I've worked for Censored TV for 4 years. I've been to so many protests, and I find it very difficult to believe that no one was arrested. And that makes me think, were the masked men fighting the police, were they just other police? Was it just a performance? Like, I don't know. They might get upset about that, but it just seems like from being at that many protests, the police seem to be pretty serious about arresting people if they act quite violently. In Queensland,
so it's all in a day. The pepper spray. Like, the lefties were just blocking the traffic, the Extinction Rebellion today, and the police just stood by and didn't do much.
So they didn't deploy the pepper spray. They didn't go crazy on them.
They did at that Arms Expo in Melbourne. What is that called? The fucking Land Force protest. Yeah, that's it.
That's right. No, I think you're absolutely right, Andrew. Like, so I've been doing content for Censored TV. We've done so many protests, so many events. We've done banner drops off bridges. We've done we've interacted with Marxists and the opposition. So, yeah, I've had a few negative news articles written by Marxists. I've never had so much negative interaction with the system. Like, these guys seem to be the reaction from the system is building up of weaponizing the system against. Like, you're 100% correct.
If they didn't have Tom Sewell, they'd have to invent him.
So they love him.
Oh, absolutely. Because after the war on terror, all these people had no jobs, right? These federal employees. So they need, and the same thing's going on in the US with the the whole white movement coming under the surveillance state. It's very simple. People in Canberra need jobs. And
they've got to justify the budget. They're like, there's $100 million spent on anti-terror.
Yep, I can see them walking the corridor around the corner to the Attorney General's department. Hey, guess what we've just found? We've got some great footage of a bunch of idiots from Victoria, jumping around in some national park. We can run this on the news and then ask for another sort of $50 million. And all those guys we're going to have to sack. We're going to bring them on as analysts. And so, I mean, Tom Sewell is, and as well as that, the aesthetics are just terrible. It looks like a bunch of ninjas or those guys who hang on trains. They catch they wear the baseball hats and the Nautica gear.
Train surfers.
It looks like some sort of gang of train guys. It's really embarrassing. You can't sell it to anyone with who's serious. Can't sell it to anyone on the North Shore.
But they get plenty of affirmation online. They have their show right now, which has got 500 more viewers than's watching us right now. So, and also on X, when they post, they get lots of praise for whatever they're doing.
No, I don't buy it. Look, most of those people aren't even from Australia. From what I understand, it's a revolving door of about the same 30 people, right? We're not talking anyone of consequence. We're talking sort of marginal characters from, the outer suburbs of, the major urban centres of Australia. There's no one who's got any sort of elite.
But young people, people are disenfranchised. I do believe, the young generation of, I could buy 14 years ago, I bought a house as a labourer. I'm a concrete labourer, just working for a company. I could afford to save up and buy a home deposit. And it was I could work a reasonable amount and afford a certain lifestyle. Now it's unaffordable, unattainable. The Australian dream is drifting out of reach of so many. And young people are disenfranchised. I believe they will look towards cultural Marxism or National Socialism as this system's not working for me. There must be an alternative way because this isn't working. So reasonable people, we can change things. We can improve things. It doesn't have to be like this.
Sure.
We can
look, I agree.
Immigration. We can deregulate housing. We can reinstate a more patriotic curriculum. And
let's start off with an alternative to the ninjas.
Yeah,
because no one wants to end up in sort of Goulburn Supermax, which is, from what I understand, at least sort of 7 or 8 of Tom Sewell's associates have ended up behind bars at this point. So it's not a great value proposition for any young activist. Look, as you said there, we need to have a more common sense alternative somewhere between, this Sky News boomer sort of thought bubble and the
ABC,
the Melbourne Ninjas, right? We need to have a sort of an Anglo-Saxon sort of civic society movement. I want to get away from this idea of sort of parties.
Well, there's the British Australian community.
Look, I agree. That's not a bad initiative. I'd like to see a bit more sort of community engagement from them, some sort of footprint physically.
They hold conferences now. They're not just an online educational resource.
So we did this year. We did with the British Australian community. We did a Highland Games. We did an arm wrestling competition, and they did their backpack conference. And then next year, the goal is to do 4 quarterly blokey type events. And we're going to network with Young Nation, which is One Nation's young adults, ANA, Australian Nativist Association, the Libertarian Party, and then Uhuru Mates is my network that I'm building and branding and working on my own project. And then it's sort of like we're combining these groups together and we're doing some what are like public and blokey and family friendly events. Great. And it's sort of not, it's, you know, because it'll be every second month or every third month. So it's not like you're locked into
a
crazy
Dusty,
thing.
Great. I actually ran into you, by the way, at the the rally for South Africans in Brisbane. I'm not sure if you remember that.
It was terrific.
So yes, there is a large appetite for a pro-wide message out there, without the this Hollywood. I thought we'd dealt with this Hollywood Nazi sort of thing back in the 90s with Jack Van Tongeren, and it finally gone to bed.
Can't we be, in a sense, like I'm in this kind of strange sense, like I don't particularly like the idea of racism, like just blanket hate someone by the color of their skin, but that is the way I feel European Australians are treated. So I'll be like, yo, stop your fucking racism towards my people. I've got children. I have a wife. We have all these. We've built this nation, and it's disgusting. We have a civilized society that we've created, and we actually don't. I don't tolerate that. I don't appreciate it. I don't tolerate it. We want a flourishing, prosperous, civilized society. That's what we want.
Exactly. And I think we're all on the same page with reference to that. And it's also exciting to be able to offer people even a positive sort of idea of, Anglo-Australia coming from just a completely pro-white perspective without reference to any sort of, negative attention. I'd love to, towards others, I'd love to, have a diplomatic sort of, forum initiative where we reach out to, ethnic communities, that sort of thing.
There is, what is it? Man Up or Destiny Church. They have it's mainly Pacific Islanders, but they're Europeans who go to the church and in the men's group. But they have they're actually so you'll be talking to a Maori big Islander dudes, and they have the same mentality as us. They see all the problems, mass migration, cost of living, the attack on Western civilization. They appreciate British culture coming to New Zealand and Australia and the region, and they go, we want this. This is what we want. We don't want your multiculturalism and Marxism. We're actually, you know what I mean? And they want to encourage masculinity and bloke stuff and Christianity. So that's another group. I would be happy to work with them a bit closer. Because they seem reasonable. They inspire me to be more patriotic and be like, you know what, you're absolutely right. And they'll be like, they'll be like, we don't want the mass migration. It all shut down. They don't want the cultural the critical race theory, critical gender theory. They point it all out. They name the names. They say this is shit. We don't want it.
Well, as long as they're okay with with us as Anglo-Australians, as white Australians, well, I'm happy to sort of break bread with anybody. And I'd love to talk to you further about that sort of stuff. That sounds like a great initiative. All right. Well,
they might run all the arm wrestling events, so that's why I don't invite them. No, I did invite them actually to the last one, but so what city are you in? Are you in Brisbane or no? You're in Victoria.
Right now, I'm traveling. I'm in Sydney at the moment.
Sweet. If you ever get to Brisbane, hit me up. If you ever want to come to one of our events, come along.
Oh, yeah, sure thing. Or
DM me on Twitter.
Okay, great.
That'd be sick.
Totally. I'd love to meet you as well, Matty.
You too.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming on, mate. We hope you join us again.
No worries. Good bloke. Yeah, he's good. He seems very well seasoned. Certainly more so than me for a lot of things.
Well, your mic's fine, Dusty, I reckon.
If I touch my mic, I reckon it will just drop out. It's a bit like
Yeah,
need-
yeah.
Gavin
it's-
McInnes Gavin bought this mic, and I need to hit him up for a new one. Be like, "God, man, I must have spilt some beer on it."
We found out it was you during the
Was
US
it?
election stream.
I was
Yeah.
using my iPhone then.
Yeah, it was. Don't you have a microphone you can plug into your iPhone?
Oh, I do. I have the JD.
Yeah, we'll use that next time.
There's a comment that I want to.
DJI.
There's a comment that I want to have a look at. So the Devastator, it would be good for a unified positive negative vision for Australia. So this is actually something that I've done a lot of mulling over, and I've had many a drink thinking about it. So without going into a massive monologue, Australia, it's that when something that the Greens specifically say a lot of when they look at, say, specific government policies or spending, almost every time the Greens will bring up European countries such as Denmark or Holland and places like that. But the problem is that when every time they reference it, it's a really, really small country that's existed for hundreds, some like 1,000 years. Australia doesn't have that. So we've been around, we've been developing for 250 odd years, but we're such a big, expansive country that we just can't compare ourselves to that. And it really strikes a chord with me, because when I think about Australia and what we really need as a vision for Australia is you've got to look at Australia, and this is how I look at Australia as a nation. We're a very, very young nation where you could almost say that our cities, it's almost just the scaffold of the nation's been built, because there is so much more work that needs to be done. And it's important that we build on top of what the generations who came before us built. And I think what we really need to do is we need to say, right, lads, pick up a shovel. There's a lot of work to be done. And I think people like the truck drivers and the farmers, and especially the tradies, I mean, imagine if we had more tradies, especially with our population increase. Like, how valuable would more tradies be to this nation? Personally, to me, to go on a deeper level than what the Devastator was talking about is it's not so much just a vision for Australia, but we really need to refine a national identity. So we need to say what is it about what makes an Australian, which is a unique value to have, which no other country has. And if someone has that value, every single person globally can say that bloke's an Australian. Like, we need to really define that first before we can look at where we're going to go as a nation.
Do you think I think mateship is something uniquely Australian, like the ability to go to a bar, be like, "How you going, mate?" You don't know the guy. So when I went to America, and it was like, there's fucking Mexicans and blacks and Jews and all these different kinds of people, and I'm like, "Hey, you going, mate?" Just chatting to them.
I reckon,
and not about anything, just like, "Yo, fucking want a beer? I'm on holidays," talking shit, and like people loved it. They were like, "Oh, Australians, you guys are fucking good. We have a good rep." You know what I mean? We actually have a good rep, and I think that of like Filipinos, like in the concreting game, I'd be like, Filipinos have a good rep. Fijians have a good rep. For
We've got a Filipino in the
chappy.
chat, Margot Huss.
There's actually something my year 11 geography teacher, so she used to say to me all the time, she used to say, "You've got to risk it for the biscuit." And it didn't make sense till I was much older. And it's a very, very Australian thing, because Australians, they say that if you put the work in, there's an opportunity where you're going to be really prosperous. And Australians, time after time, as history shows, will put their life on the line for a chance at prosperity. I mean, you have a look at people like Harold Lassiter, you have a look at people like Burke and Wills. Like, these are people who are quite literally trying to say, you know what, this country is so full of opportunity and I'm gonna prove that I can make something of myself in this country.
Mm.
And it's not by wearing a suit, going to a board meeting. It's by picking up a shovel and going out into the outback and saying, you know what, I'm gonna do something with my life. And that's, to me, that's something that's inherently Australian. Really, really Australian is to live like that.
Do you think, like, I'm hoping with the Trump election, there's a few things there, like no tax on overtime, where I'm
tips.
no tax on tips, and I think it was no tax on overtime as well. It was the both.
We don't have. In the US, it's different because in hospitality, tips are basically customary because the minimum wage is so low. We don't have a tipping culture.
Yeah, the tips aren't relevant to us, but he did say no tax on tips or overtime. And like for Australia right now, I know for a working class blue collar person, a bloke, it was the overtime. It was the opportunity to do overtime. And then I got a second job driving a forklift at night, and I started mowing lawns, and I started selling cars and, flicking a few cars. I
feel that we're
creating a side hustle to make money to get ahead, to get the deposit.
Spirit. I mean, in the US, it's always been there, particularly also the volunteerism, because they initially didn't have a welfare state. Like, they've got so many community
Entrepreneurial
groups, particularly the churches. Is the firefighter who was shot dead by the Trump assassin, Corey Commentore, firefighter, he was a massive volunteer as well.
This is attached to Christianity. So, like, as a Christian, I became a Christian. Like I said, I did 2 years of volunteering street evangelism, and then followed up by 8 years of youth and young adults.
The US is way more religious than we are.
Yeah, but like the spiritual implications in my life that changed me literally did activate me towards volunteering. So we did, like, I would have averaged at least 10 hours a week volunteering for 10 years. And actually on the election day, when I did the shoey on censored TV, when the Trump election, a young Aboriginal lad came up to me and said, "Oh, Dusty, remember me? You were my youth leader." It was an Aboriginal lad. And he said, "We had so much fun. You changed our lives." On his street in Inala was the biggest gang street in Inala, right? It's the 77 gang. And I'd pick him up. I'd go in there, I'd pick up all the young lads and take them to youth group. And this kid was a rat bag. He was up to no good. But I was just creating a positive, fun environment where it wasn't, we were kind of up to no good. We were using like masculine energy, doing wild and crazy stuff. No drugs, no alcohol, no, you know what I mean? No fighting and bashing each other up. But we pushed the limits on blokey stuff that you'd want to do. It was like Jackass, a few times a week, catching up, doing stupid bloke stuff. But provided an environment where that energy was dispersed in a much more positive way. So this kid has ingrained in his mind like 8 years of solid living without any gambling, drugs, or binge drinking. And we were teaching him biblical principles from the Word of God. But he literally was like, "Thanks so much. You changed my life." Still today, everyone on the street still goes to the youth group. The next generation is going to that church. And he's like, "Cheers, mate." I was like, "No worries, dude." I was like, the trick to volunteering is I had a fucking great time as well. And this is why we're like, Maddie knows, we met at the Libertarian we're still volunteering, we're still connected into our local community, wanting to push the limit of changing things for the positive. We do that with the local Ipswich Libertarian branch. I'm a member of my local church. Also, we are forming Uhuru Mates, which we began to create that this year with our events. And that will be around this idea of mateship. So we'll be reaching out and connecting to all kinds of different people and groups at a very low commitment level. Like they don't have to sign up and fucking do, sign up or pay money to be a part of it. It will be like, join this group, just come be connected as mates. That's the number one priority, connected as mates. But yeah, I reckon I'm fully believe it. Like I was thinking about it today, Tim. It is literally that faith aspect in my life that I say I must continue to save Australia at a spiritual level and in the real world, in our lives and spiritually, we have to actively do something to save this country. It is by volunteering and actively getting out and doing it. And it's a part of my faith. It's a spiritual has to be done from the inside out. I have to do it. I'm on mission.
Yeah, that sounds a bit like that's the exact same mentality I had when I went out to Tubia the other week. So when we were out there, right? There's a lot more to that. I know I had a rant at the start of the stream, but there's a lot more to that story. So obviously we know that 95% of the town is now under native title freehold. Within that 95% of the Tubia Reserve, which is under freehold now, is the town's only water supply. So the water supply, so where everyone in the town gets their drinking water and their bathing water, right, is now owned under a private property from this Aboriginal corporation who no longer lives there. And even though it's only a small town, because there's only the last census in 2021 said there was only 129 people who live there. As of right now, there's only 32 people. So it's a tiny little town, no bigger than like a street. They're like this native title, it doesn't matter like what you say about if you think native title is a good thing or a bad thing. The fact of the matter is it's now threatening the only water supply that town's got. And it's and you can say, it's like, no matter who you are, you can say that's a bad thing. Like you just don't, like, to me, it really got me on a deep level. It's like you don't do that to another Australian. It doesn't matter if they're living in like Bondi or if they're on some tiny little town with 30 people. You just don't threaten an Australian like that. And I had to do something. And
they're faceless. This is sort of like the Canberra thing. We don't see these politicians. They're on fucking other side of the country and they're telling us what to do. And we're creating another layer of government. Like this town now has the equivalent of Aboriginal Canberra dictating fucking some new rules and we want some money. And you're like, what?
This has been
like, how is this beneficial?
This non-exclusive native title. This has been accelerated since the Albanese government was elected and implemented by the state Labor governments, and they've just continued on. It would have been so much. It would have gotten so much worse if the Voice had succeeded. But this is the stealth that because it's not, and because we're in a highly urbanized country, I know it's different in Queensland because it's the least urbanized state, but it's hardly covered this, because it is, even though it's termed non-exclusive, it and that they're not coming for your property. It's they still have this veto power over things that can, as you said, they don't even live there. Very much these, like, you talk about elites in the shadows. I mean, this is the exact definition.
That's right.
It is.
That's
How
sad.
will it benefit any Aboriginals? Like, how do I have Aboriginal mates who rock up on my doorstep. I'm accused of being a far right white nationalist, yet Aboriginals locally constantly will say, "Hey, Dusty, cheers, mate. Fucking legend. Want to hug me, bro?" I went into the city to have beers with the boys, and there was fucking like 10 20-year-olds, look like a gang of, Abos and Islanders and Bogans, fucking running up to me, and my mates are like, "What the fuck?" And they're like, "Oh," hugging me, give me hugs. That was a part of the same crew this guy was from. But yeah,
It
I
gets
do
worse,
not
Dusty.
believe any of these people are going to be helping any Aboriginals.
Yeah.
I don't think they give a fuck. They don't care about the Bogans. They don't care about us. They don't care. It's a weaponization. They don't care about Aboriginals. They hate white people. They
That's
are
the
fucking
main
racist
motivation,
and they're
like
pieces of shit.
particularly banning hiking and rock climbing for cultural reasons. It's just basically to exclude white people from enjoying Australia's
No
great
one will
outdoors.
enjoy it. Like if
That's
you
that's the point.
yeah, no one will enjoy it. No one will enjoy the country. They might just be environmentalists, like nutcases.
Oh yeah, they've definitely co-opted the movement. And they use Aboriginal heritage to knock out all of these mining. Like, remember Tanya Plibersek with that gold mine, and because the actual Aboriginal corporation didn't give her the answer that she wanted, there was this rival traditional owners group by this white lady who had some Aboriginal ancestry she discovered back in the 1800s because she was against it, and that spiritual thing, right, I'm going to believe you. Like, that gives the game away completely.
I thought ASIO came out with some report saying that China was funding environmental activists to shut down mine sites, and in particular rare earth metal mine sites. So why wouldn't they use Aboriginal stuff? Why wouldn't they use
are they
feminist
hoping
stuff?
that
Why wouldn't they use race baiting
the
stuff?
Aboriginals would sell it directly to them? Is that what their strategy is?
No, they were just trying to absolutely lock
But
it.
how would that benefit
landlocked.
them, since they need our minerals?
I know. I think it was in particularly the rare earth metals. So they have a monopoly on rare earth metals in refining and mining of rare earth metals. It was an actual ASIO report, and I couldn't pull it up for you right now, Tim, but it's a real thing.
Yeah, it gets deeper as well. So I won't ramble too much more. But the Biggenbull Corporation, who made the claim over 2BR, they were also convicted of fraud of several $1 million for other reasons as well. And they also made a claim for reparations of billions of dollars. And there's only 200 people who exist in the Biggenbull tribe, and it was going to work out to be $50 million per Biggenbull person.
That's it's simply a reparations is simply a cash grab. How come, like, successful British colonial countries aren't demanding reparations like Malaysia or Singapore or India?
Yeah. So I mean, to me. I won't talk too much more about sort of work I've been doing, but like the reason why I've been doing a lot of these videos is because there's so much missing context, right? And like I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of it, but there's a really common euphemism called a red herring, And a red herring basically means that someone says we need to do this for reason A, but then if they achieve reason A and also achieve the result for reason B, the actual real reason that they're doing it is reason B. And so you can kind of say, all right, so they've got a native title where they want to prove that they had stewardship of the land prior to 1788. And you've got non-exclusive title, and you can say, okay, so this basically says that everywhere that's currently public land, you can say that this is your people's land, but everyone who's already been born here and who already lives here still has right to use that land. And you can say, well, something like that, it's inconsequential, right? And you can say, okay, so there's that. But then when you go freehold and when they say, okay, so you need to buy this land back and you need to buy it for this many millions of dollars, and if you don't, you've got no right to use that land and we will trespass you. And this also has very, very vital resources that you need to live. Then you need to make a choice whether you want to live and have these vital resources or whether you're going to give us the money. And you're like, well, hang on, that's a completely separate conversation to you proving that you had settled on the land prior to 1788. I mean, it's insane, and it's
if there was 500,000 Aboriginals on the land when Captain Cook and Arthur Phillipps came to this nation, I really do believe this, 98% of Australia never, probably still today, has had an Aboriginal foot touch it. That's how big this land is. 98%, 2% of the Australians' land mass has ever had an Indigenous foot touch the soil.
but
I reckon that is an absolute fact. It's an absolute fact.
But at the same time,
When you go out west and you see how fucking massive this, you go onto the farms and you're like, this land, I'll go hunting in the land for hours and days, tracking up and down hills.
Well, this
through
is why
bushland. No cunt has laid a foot on that land.
this is why
Ever. Not
Bruce
even the
Pascoe
farmer
has
who's
had
been there for
to
50 years.
invent Aboriginal history.
They have to invent it. It's
Yes,
most, and this is
they're-
not out like bullshitting Aboriginal mates of mine. They need to know the truth. They have been fucking lied. We're all being lied to. Has nothing to do with Indigenous people. It's the same authoritarian nutcase goblins who want to control fucking everything. They are scumbags and pieces of shit. They hate you. They don't want you to be free. We're all indigenous to this planet Earth, and we are fucking absolutely opposing them. We want freedom. We're the indigenous people of the world, cunt. This is my planet.
That comes
Get
back
out of my face. I have dominion over this place.
That comes back to what I was talking about with the red herring, where they'll talk about something really bad that happened, and then they'll say we need to resolve that, and then how they resolve that also gives this other reason, which is completely detrimental to everyone else for other
Money
reasons.
and power.
Now here's an example, right? And this is one thing which, because I'm a huge reader, like I'm a massive nerd. Some days I wish I wasn't a nerd. There are, and here's why it's really important. So there are some things that European Australians did to the Aboriginals which was not good, and we need to acknowledge that. Like here's an example, right? So when Australians or English, they were still then, first settled in Botany Bay, there was actually someone they dubbed a terrorist who was a tribesman called Pemalui, and this is documented history. Now Pemalui was a young Aboriginal hunter, and he often used to spear or attack European encampments, injure European settlers, right?
Yeah, like it was both sides.
Yeah, and what happened, right? But here's what happened, right? So eventually the Europeans actually killed Pemalui. So they caught Pemalui. They didn't believe that he was human, so they thought that he was another species. So back then they still believed in phrenology. So they actually decapitated his body, put his head in some sort of formaldehyde solution, and then they actually sent Pemului's head back to London to study phrenology on the head of Pemului. Now,
They thought he was like a Yowie or something.
yeah, so Pemului was the very first indigenous who was ever killed by a European, and his head has never been recovered. And I think there's especially from those who are pushing the native title stuff, they will bring up subjects of like horrendous crimes that the Europeans have done, and then they'll claim that, you know, here's what we need to do to make it right, but it's obviously at the cost of current people who live here now. So you kind of need to say, well, this is what happened now. How about what we should do? Why don't we run a commission to say, you know, Australia needs to find and offer the reinterment of Pemului's remains to his tribe, because this is where it all started, and this is what we need to do. Because you can say native title aside, you know, land, like cash grabs aside, all of that kind of thing, you can say it none of that. Like if you say let's reinter Pemului's remains, it comes at no cost to anyone in Australia, but it's still symbolic to that reconciliation, which is so important to the left. So it's important to say, like, there are some things that they're right about, and there are some things that they're wrong about. Because if you say that they're wrong about everything, then you're also going to be wrong. But if you say that if you say that they're right about everything, then you're going to be selling your kids' future short. So you kind of need to have a distinction. You sort of need to draw the line somewhere to say, like, here's what you're right about, and here's what you're wrong about, and here's how we move forward as a country.
History is complex, and it's those sort of questions and history are not going to be explored objectively at those various truth commissions, which state governments are going ahead with anyway. We've got one here in Victoria. It's called the Europe Justice Commission.
Like, I was born in New Zealand and, you know, raised around Maoris, and they were like family friends. Just, they were good family friends. My parents are great friends with these people. You're raised around them. You're the best of friends. And I felt connected to New Zealand, the land of New Zealand, and even the indigenous people of New Zealand. And I still today have a great respect for them. I look at Maori people and I'm like, I freaking admire you guys. I'm grateful to be born in New Zealand. I think there's God at a purpose for Anglo-Celtic people to come to New Zealand and be connected with them people. And I also think my parents migrated to Australia, and I've connected with Indigenous people. And I think you guys would probably have a connection with Indigenous people as well, being born on the land. You're nativist Australians, and you're connected to the land.
Not too many here in Victoria.
Well, you would be instinctively connected to the land you're born on. You know, you're connected to it. This is nature. This is I believe, creation, and even nature itself. You're connected to it in a quite powerful and amazing way.
We know how the land works. Obviously,
Anglo people have absolutely dominated, and you know, most of the battles that people say, "Oh, we're fucking black versus white, rich versus all this bullshit." Rich versus poor, black versus white, man versus woman, gay versus straight. It's us as individuals against nature, and nature will fucking kill you. And we're actually against nature. The laws of nature, and we have to survive. If we get this right, the Anglos have been hugely successful at this. We are living more in one with nature by controlling it and harnessing the power of nature. And still today, we have a great culture of camping, hunting, fishing, farming. We all want to be connected to it. I love to be connected to that. And then you get connected to seeing the power, how we dominate it and control it, and how it feeds us and provides for us. It's amazing.
You know what's actually really heartbreaking for me when I look at what's happening in this country is have a look at what happened to Melbourne and what's happened culturally to Melbourne City. And do you know what really makes it extra heartbreaking? A lot of people wouldn't actually know, but Australia was actually founded in Melbourne City with Henry Park's vision for a federation of the colonies. It was in the old Melbourne Exhibition Centre. And Melbourne is where Burke and Wills started their expedition directly north as well.
And Melbourne was purchased legitimately from the Aborigines by John Batman, but apparently the Aboriginal academics today they claim that it wasn't a fair trade. And they also say, John Batman was responsible for the Tasmanian Indigenous genocide. So they basically say, well, that means it's all null and void, his purchase of Melbourne. He's actually the traditional owner of Melbourne now.
Jeez. Goodness me.
I think we should wrap it up. We've just hit a minute. We've hit an hour and a half. So I think it's a good time to wrap it up. Thanks for coming on,
Sure.
Devastator. I love that name. That's a fucking cool name.
Yeah, I've never seen. He's on my channel. I've never seen him before, but yeah, great to see you. And tune in for Tim's News Explosion back on Mondays at 9 p.m. Melbourne time.
Love it.
Awesome. You're doing some live streams, Matty J Stag.
Yeah, tomorrow night. I'll probably just.
So we can follow you on Twitter. I'm pretty sure your handle is in the description. If you go to the previous post underneath this live stream, there's Tim and Matty J Stag's handle.
Yeah, I got all my original content, all original videos of me, buddy, going all across southeast or central Queensland as well now, figuring out what's going on and figuring what's happening with the country and filling in the blanks that the news doesn't do. So that's everything I do these days.
Awesome. And Tim Wilms is like the most consistent newsman, trustworthy newsman I think we have. I trust him. He knows what's going on.
Yeah, I'll be covering, there'll be further Trump appointments, I'm sure, over the weekend. And yeah, we'll see what the fate of the disinformation law is and the digital ID Trojan horse, which is billed as protecting kids from social media harm.
Yeah, it's crazy. They'll never be able to do that. To implement that would take so much control. So it's scary.
So the Australian people that have complied once before, they almost they were pretty happy to QR code check in everywhere.
I changed my name to the Bogan Christian Lobby for maybe 8 months, 10, maybe it was close to a year. And that was while my Australian citizenship was processing, because I was like the Marxist writing all these gay articles about the Dusty Bogan. And, I'm such a fucking evil, crazy person. So I was like, shoot, I got to come up with a strategy to go under the radar for a little bit. And that was my strategy. And it worked. I got my citizenship. And, yeah. Right. Thanks, lads. I'll be dropping next week. I'll be dropping the British Australian Community Backpack Convention or conference, whatever we want to call it. I'll be dropping that episode on Censored TV and I'll post some shorts about it maybe later on the next week. But tune in next Thirsty Thursday, and we'll have another delicious beer, and we might bring on some more people from the comment section if they're keen. Now, I was born in New Zealand, but now I've migrated to I lived in New Zealand for like 5 years. Born in New Zealand, we came straight to Australia as a baby, and then we re-migrated back to New Zealand for 5 years during primary school. And they called me the Aussie kid because I had an Aussie accent. And then we migrated back to Australia, and I finally got my citizenship after at 36 years of age. And I love Australia. I am Australian culturally, and yeah, whatever. God bless you. Catches next week. I'll fucking see you. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Maddie. Cheers.